This is Glen Echo Park in Maryland, an abandoned amusement park. Just look around here. What a great photographic subject. The old carousel house, the shooting galleries up the hill, the food stands. But you know, here there's another photo story. One of these buildings, a place where families used to sit down and enjoy chicken dinners, has been reclaimed and turned into photo works, where the basics of darkroom techniques and studio photography are taught. One of the many students learning printing techniques here at the PhotoWorks darkroom has already created some pretty outstanding prints. He's got a slight edge, though, since he's got access to some of the best negatives in the files of Life magazine. However, there's a simple explanation, since Ed Clark took many of those shots during his 22 years as a Life magazine photographer. Ed, let me interrupt your work just a minute here. You know, you spent so many years taking great pictures for Life. How is it that you're just learning printing now?
Well, as a Life photographer, there wasn't time to make prints. I was always shooting, sending the pictures into Life, and they printed them. But now I'm learning how to do it properly.
Ed, I understand you were out of photography for a while.
Yeah, 20 years. I had real eye problems, and a year and a half ago I had them fixed, and now I'm back into it again.
Did you think you'd never take any pictures?
I never thought I would ever take a picture again in my life.
What are you working on right now, Ed?
Well, right now I'm printing some pictures from an essay I did in Brooklyn 40 years ago, hopefully for an exhibit. I don't know where, but they certainly tell a lot about Brooklyn at that particular era.
Ed, tell me how you decided to be a photographer.
Well, it was pure happenstance. My friend Campbell Bly and I were in high school in Nashville, Tennessee in the late 20s, and we were standing on the street corner one night, and we tried to decide what we were going to do with our lives. And a beautiful car came by, a Chrysler convertible with the top down, and Campbell said, "What does he do? Maybe we could do what he does." I said, "We don't want to do that. He's a floor-laying contractor." And later on, another car came by, and painted on the side, it said, C.J. Burnell, staff photographer of the Nashville Tennessean. We said, why don't we be photographers? We didn't know a thing about photography, but we both became photographers on the Nashville Tennessean. That's where it began.
Tell us about your career with Life magazine.
Well, when Life offered me a job, I accepted, of course, on the spot, because everybody wanted to work for Life, until they said, "When can you move to New York?" Well, I was too provincial to move to New York, and I said I couldn't do that. So they said, "Well, you can't work for Life." So I went home, and they started sending me assignments, and I kept getting them and getting back in the magazine. So finally they said, "You can live in Nashville and work for us," and I did. Then they sent me to Paris for a year to cover Europe. I did an essay on Paris, 2 essays that ran for big space. And then finally they said, "If you don't move out of Nashville, we're never going to give you another raise." And that was a great incentive to move me, and I moved to Los Angeles, and I covered the Hollywood scene and politics and movies and all that sort of thing for 5 years. Then Eisenhower was elected, and I had covered both of Dewey's campaigns when he ran for president, and Jim Haggerty was his press secretary. And when Jim Haggerty became Eisenhower's press secretary, Jim and I became good friends. And they said, "Ed, how about moving to Washington to cover the White House," among other things. So I did, and I came here. And at one point, while I was still in Hollywood, I saw a little story in the Los Angeles Times that said 33 American businessmen are going to Russia at the invitation of the Russian government. So I wrote a letter to, this is 1951, I wrote a letter to the embassy here in Washington. I said, "I'm a Life photographer, why can't I go along too?" I didn't hear from them for 5 years. I was shooting part of the making of movie Carousel at Booth Bay Harbor, Maine, when Life called me and said, "You have a visa to Russia." So I went to Russia in 1955, and nobody had been there for 30 years. And that produced, in 2 months, 35 pages in Life.
Coming up next, more with Life magazine's Ed Clark as we hear the stories behind some of his favorite shots.